if you embrace the concept of advancement and growth, both in your personal and professional life, you've got a legitimate shot at experiencing accelerated and sustained success in business and at home. Working on your self improvement and development would demonstrate the elite ability to do a personal self assessment, to address your shortcomings, and accentuate your strengths. Don't believe me? I've got some proof in the pudding that I want to share. According to a recent survey conducted by the International Coach Federation, found that 70% of entrepreneurs who engage in personal development activities reported improved business performance. This includes employee retention, increased revenue, and customer satisfaction. So, my friends, you can see that there is real, tangible benefits to working on yourself as an entrepreneur. No one could agree with that statement more than my friend David Ask. He's a well-respected and standout member in the field of entrepreneurship and personal and product development. He's the driving force behind StatGuardPlus.com, which is a product showcase featured in over 3,000 retailers, including Home Depot and Lowe's. Alongside this success, David also spearheads two mastermind groups under the prestigious banner of ISI. His true passion is personal growth and overcoming obstacles and dialing in on a uniquely special and important purpose. He also serves as the lead coach for Dr. Andy Garrett's True North Blueprint, which helps people become the most resilient people on earth. And in his spare time, he can be seen singing all over the world. His voice has been compared to the likes of Josh Groban and Andrea Bocelli. And he joined me this week to talk all about his love for personal development, his success in entrepreneurship, and how he helps to coach people to reach their entrepreneurial and personal success. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Absolutely. So, David, if you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program. And I'm super excited to learn all about your journey in entrepreneurship and personal development, my friend. And thank you so much for being here. And thanks for a few minutes.
Let's do it.
Absolutely. Now, David, I'm curious to get your thoughts as we begin our conversation on your definition of entrepreneurial diversification, and what does it mean to you to show diversification in entrepreneurship?
Well, I tell you what, I like the idea of just, when you think about diversification in general, right? It seems to kind of paint this picture of not having your eggs all in one basket. It's a kind of a sense of safety, as it were. So what's interesting about, my story is I actually moved from a little town in Minnesota to Nashville, Tennessee, back in 1994 to do music like a million other people. And what's really fascinating is now over the course of 3 decades of being in Nashville, I still do music as well as a few other things. So my diversification, with regards to like income streams, as it were, is I do a kind of my main book of business, as it were, is I along with my brother-in-law about 10 years ago invented a product called the StatGuard Plus, and it's a thermostat guard with a combination lock. And we sell in about 3,000 retail stores, including the Home Depot and Lowe's. And I'm really, happy about that product and just thrilled to, have gone through that entrepreneurial journey, right? That's that story in and of itself is kind of defines the idea of an entrepreneur, meaning someone who jumps into the deep end of the pool and figures it out. And then I do some coaching as well on the side. So I coach entrepreneurs and as well as do some life coaching as well.
Yeah, and let's dive into the coaching side of this because, David, in preparing for this interview, I came across a stat that was published by LinkedIn, and I was curious to get your thoughts on the whole notion of development as an entrepreneur. So the stat was that 70% of entrepreneurs who embraced the whole concept of personal development and growth as an entrepreneur, seeing an increased level of performance and productivity during their workday. So tell me, why do you think personal development is so important for an evolving entrepreneur?
Boy, I tell you what, that's actually a topic that is near and dear to my heart. And Kevin, so real quick, I want to say your level of preparedness here right out of the gate is fantastic, by the way.
Well, thank you.
I do a lot of podcast interviews, and the questions quite often are kind of generic and boring. And I love that you're really prepared here. So one of the things that I do with regards to my coaching is I work as the lead coach for Dr. Andy Garrett's True North Blueprint. And what we do is we help people really drill into, their uniqueness of bedrock, who they are, like we all have a fingerprint, we all have, a retina that's different. And of course, our souls, right, are very different. And so that sense of self-awareness, and I sometimes use that term, a little hesitantly, just because sometimes people roll their eyes and they're like, well, I guess that's just me staring at my own belly button or whatever. But here's what's really fascinating is when I know why I'm different, and how I'm different and what my makeup is, versus the person next to me. And I'm talking values, convictions. I like to say I think I got this from a Nissan commercial. What is it that gives your goosebumps? Mm-hmm. Your strengths, your those things the things that make you mad, right? The problems that you want to solve, things like that. It's like, I like this word, the word passion comes from the word suffer. What are you willing to suffer for? And guess what? It's different from the person next to you. So to kind of dial in on your question there a bit more is I think that, the idea of productivity and entrepreneurship and just in general, taking ground and, kicking butt, as it were, really starts with self-awareness. You have to know yourself. Otherwise, you're probably going to be choosing activities and choosing things throughout your day that, excuse me, that are just not as meaningful, right? It might be what you value might be what someone else values that you admire, as opposed to tapping the brakes, doing some deep work, and really defining those characteristics for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And, David, one of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you was because, we share a mutual synergy in the fact that we both love to see the development of people, and I know that you lead a couple of mastermind groups, and you deal with a whole swath of different people on a daily basis, my friend. So tell me about the development of people and really getting them to understand their unique use as people. Because, David, I always say that if you don't celebrate your differences, you're leaving a deficit for the rest of the world because no matter how many degrees you have on a wall or how many years you went to school, you can always learn something for somebody else. So talk to me about the whole idea of the human experience and the idea of learning from other people. And I know you do that on a daily basis, so I'm wondering your thoughts there.
Yeah, man, what a wonderful question. So those, if you spend a lot of time with me, especially over this last couple of years, you'll hear me say this quote. It's by Benjamin Disraeli, the former PM of England back in the 1800s. But he said that the greatest good you can do for another is not to share with him your riches, but to reveal to him his own. And I love this idea that, especially when you're growing up, right? You walk into a room of your peers, you walk, next to the cool people, right? And this really translates into adulthood. What we're looking for is and it's kind of a way of backing into this. We're looking for the admiration of the admirable. So when someone that you look up to, whether of course it should be your parents, and those closest to you growing up, when they see gold in you, when they see something that, seems to really rise to the top, and they say something, right? They validate that thing and they say, hey, David, I saw you step out and do this type of thing or say this type of thing. And I could see your passion rising. I could see your sense of mission rising. And by the way, that felt good to us. That felt good to experience that side of you. I think that is one of the best, gifts you could, give anybody. And really, it's such a wonderful way to love someone at their core, right? If somebody walks into the room and you say, "Hey, dude, nice shoes," okay, right? A compliment's a compliment. And you might mean it. That's all good and fine. But when someone shows up and they share their heart and they share something that's convictional to them, and then later on you call them up and you say, "Hey, hey, Kevin, I loved when you said this phrase and when you used this word. It seemed to really shift things in the room and shifting things inside of me. And I know it took courage to step out on that limb. And I just want to validate the fact that that was really great." So I really believe that personal development, and that sense of ourselves, we can't generate that on our own. People can, what we do with, the True North Blueprint is to ask people really powerful questions. I forget who said it, but, the question, the power of the question is really kind of at the height of learning, right? It's the right question. And what's really fascinating is when you get someone to answer those questions for themselves, that's, I think, probably 70% of the battle. But then we don't live in a vacuum. We don't live on an island. We were made to be in community with others. And when people that we, hopefully, that love us, right, or that we admire and that we have chosen to do life with closely, when they start to validate those things and to point them out and shine a spotlight on them, well, then we dare to believe that those really great, courageous things that are towards the top of us, as it were, the greatest good, we dare to believe those things because we really want to. And then we start acting more in alignment with those things. And the world is blessed because we're not shrinking from what we would dare hope be, the truest, not just true, but the truest and most wonderful things about our essence and what makes us different from somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. You talk about making us different from someone else, David. I'm going to share just a quick story about myself. So anyone that listens or watches my podcast knows that I was born with what's called spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy. David, that
Mm,
simply means that I don't have enough oxygen in my legs to walk normally, and I found out, David, at the age of 9 that I wouldn't be able to walk without
mm,
the assistance of a walker for the duration of my life. But I always tell myself I can either work for my circumstances or have my circumstances work for me. And I know that you're a huge believer in helping people overcome obstacles
yeah.
on the road to prosperity, my friend, during their personal growth journey there. So tell me about the whole idea of overcoming obstacles and turning that into prosperity and what that means to you.
Man, overcoming obstacles. So it's funny, by the way, Kevin, I started writing a book literally this month called The Guardians of Grit. And we often think that grit and resilience, are the same thing, right? But I want to make a couple of things really clear, with regards to overcoming obstacles. Resilience is just simply bouncing back, to what was, right? You get knocked on the ground, you stand up again. It's this idea like a basketball, right? If it's it gets compressed and hit backwards, it bounces back to its original shape. And of course, when we think about resilience, we think about this idea of getting back up quicker as opposed to staying knocked down and floundering and wasting time and losing ground and losing money and all that kind of thing. Where grit, with regards to overcoming obstacles, is simply this idea of I'm going to do hard things over a long period of time because I believe in the mission. What's on the other side of this hill or obstacle is something that I believe in. And it's, grit, I think, requires that word, suffer, like passion. What am I willing to suffer for here? And I think for, again, that's different for everybody. And I I'm kind of one of these guys that's a bit of a dreamer. I like to think, um, like knights in shining armor and slaying dragons and things like that, because I think that those stories, albeit very real, um, tell a story of the person that's in each of us, right? We all, especially when we're younger too, right? We're not we've not been knocked down enough and experienced enough pain where it shuts off our imagination, but we all long to be the hero, right? Whether it's the policeman or fireman or the guy that the military, the soldier, the knight, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be the person that comes in and slays the dragon. Especially as men, right? The Hebrew word for man means one who turns chaos into order. And I love that, right? You want to be that guy that walks into the room, and I hope the room gets more joyful and things like that. But I don't care whether I'm at a gas station or in my own home or in a restaurant or whatever it is. If there's something chaotic going on, I want to know that I not only have the ability, but really the desire to make a chaotic situation, harmonious again. So this idea of knowing yourself, knowing what you're wanting to, pass on in the world, the dent that you want to have, but then also, what are you willing to suffer for? What makes you mad? Like what's worth falling on your sword over? And if you don't answer those questions for yourself, personally, you're probably gonna start fighting, stupid battles that you can't win. You think might be getting a little bit maybe off topic, but I think I was in this situation for a while. Like I had such desire to do great things and to fight good battles. I'll be honest, it turned kind of political for me for a long time because I really wasn't sure who I was and I wasn't sure those things that I could control or not. And it's really easy to get really mad about something, that you can't necessarily have a real big impact on because at least it's something. But when you dial into, your uniqueness and start answering, I should say, the really powerful questions in life, it's amazing then how your sense of mission starts to change. Your definition of success starts to change, and you start bringing the greatest good inside of you to smash your obstacles and not obstacles that someone else defines as important.
Yeah, and David, I work with a lot of businesses to help them amplify the hiring of folks with disabilities and
Nice.
promote inclusion in the workforce as a professional speaker outside of hosting this podcast, my friend. And I'm always curious to ask business people like yourself or entrepreneurs, how do you think we can open up doors of inclusion for folks with disabilities? And how do you think we can change the attitudinal approach for employers when it comes to inclusion in the workforce?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think it was the first time I heard this phrase. I'm not sure he's the original, one who coined it, but Craig Groeschel uses the phrase something like this. He says, "People like us do things like this." So what's fascinating is everybody needs to have that, that internal culture, meaning someone like me does something like this, right? What would someone like me do in a situation like this? And when you start answering that question for yourself as a leader, right? You're talking about, corporations and companies and things like that. It's amazing how that sense of maturity and solidity and the like, kind of this idea of just black and white, like, man, there's gray area in life, but boy, when people sense that you're really clear about your values and what you stand for and what you stand upon and the mission that you're on, they tend to want to do that for themselves as well. So I really think it starts with the individual. We can have credos on the wall, and that's important. I'll be honest, I kind of like that kind of thing. But most of the time, people don't follow something on the wall that they walk by on their way into the office, right? They
Mhm.
follow people. They follow someone else who is setting a tone that is just, for lack of a better word, awesome, right? I'm drawn to a flame because it's bright and it's warm and it's good. So I think it really starts, everything, I'll put it this way, Kevin, everything rises and falls on leadership, period. So if a leader is not solid, if you will, inside of themselves, you're gonna have chaos, all around. So I think that to create a better work environment and to foster, whatever, a great environment for people with disabilities or whatever it is, right? It really starts with whoever is in charge, and they need to place a value on that.
Practice what you preach, right?
Yeah, nailed it.
Absolutely. David, I wanted to turn to the idea of resilience for just a moment because, I often say that resilience is the test, is the answer to the test of adversity once adversity strikes. So, how do you think we can use resilience as a growth tool to grow in both business and in life, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
And I'm going to make sure I understand your question. How can we use resiliency to do what?
To grow as business leaders and
Oh,
people.
yeah. Okay, grow. Yeah. So, what's funny is I kind of wonder, Kevin, if resiliency, when you get down to the brass tacks of it, it's, if somebody gets punched in the face, metaphorically, like, Mike Tyson says, everybody is, wants to pick a fight or whatever and is all gung ho until they get punched in the face. It's, this idea of if I get knocked down, why am I getting up? And so resiliency requires setback, but setback, in essence requires resiliency. It's the salty and sweet. You have to have, you can't have one without the other. So my thought would be is, again, when you get up, why in the world are you getting up? Right? You might get punched in the face again. And it's this idea of I'm getting up because I believe in something. Therefore, I'm going to, I'm going to get up because of my core values. So growth in all reality starts at that basis. whether that's a company that loses some sales, and I get it. I've struggled through all that kind of stuff. It's, you know what? When I lose it, when I lose an account or something like that, why do I get up again? It's because I believe that my product is saving people energy on a very practical level, right? You throw a stat guard on the wall or the combination lock, nobody's tampering with your thermostat, and you don't have to keep up with some tiny key. And I believe in those things because I want people to spend their money on, making memories with their kids and not paying the power bill. So on a very practical level, as far as a company goes, right? I believe in my product. I believe in what I'm doing. And on a personal level, you know what? I want to have the David Osk shaped dent in the universe, because when I see my impact in the world, it feels really great to be me, and it reinforces, who I am.
Yeah, absolutely. And, David, I'm a person that believes that we all have to set our own standard of expectations because, in my view, it's hard to rise to the level of someone else's expectations if you don't fundamentally set them for yourself. So I'm curious to ask you about success, purpose, and internal motivation, and how do you think all of those three things are interconnected?
Okay, so success, you said internal motivation, and what was the other one?
Purpose.
Purpose. Okay. So I'm going to haul back into it. So first of all, I think purpose, Tim Keller tweeted one time years ago, purpose is everything. And and boy, I tell you what, when you get up in the morning and you don't feel like you have a purpose, talk about a depressing space, right? You look at, people that get into their retirement years, and there's, I mean, study upon study that shows when people lack a purpose, I mean, their life expectancy drops significantly. So I think purpose is everything. And then I also think this idea of, my buddy Greg introduced me to this phrase or this question: what is your definition of success? And I think it's really, um, really important to to have clarity on what success looks like for you. Of course, when we're younger, right, we got stars in our eyes and we think, oh, it's going to be having the house and the, all the crap. But then you find out, right, the definition of success is always, always 100% of the time people. The entire point of life is about relationships. And if your relationships stink, everything else does. The rest of it is completely meaningless. So I think this idea of getting really clear on what's important in life, is to paint that definition of success. Not that you can't have all, some of the other things, right? You can have whatever you want. You just can't have all of it. And I think it's really important to define those things that are, within your, in a priority level, that are in your ability to, reasonably, achieve and produce, if you will. And then motivation, again, I think it goes back to this idea of just passion. What is it that lights you up? What is it that gives you goosebumps? What is it that makes you get that lump in your throat that's a good lump in your throat, right? What is it that's, that makes you mad, that you're wanting to snuff out or stamp out? And how can you bring the best portions of yourself to bear, the full weight of who you are to bear in those circumstances?
Yeah, absolutely. And, David, when we talk about creating a timetable for personal development, I'm sure you would agree with the fact that it's an individual journey and not a collective solution because everyone's personal development journey is different. So I'm curious, when you're looking to measure making progress on your own sort of personal development journey, how do you think people can do that effectively? Also, paying respect to the emotional side of their personal development journey.
Gosh, Kevin, you're the magician of great questions here. So I so Dr. Andy Garrett, I work closely with him, and he has a phrase where he says, follow the clues. So what does that mean? I mean, when I have predetermined, right? I'm not just getting up in the morning, licking my finger, holding it in the wind, and seeing which way the wind blows. When I've predetermined those things that are valuable to me, that's where this idea of measuring progress begins. You have to have a set point. And again, this whole idea of predetermining. So once you've predetermined the things you're going to say yes to and no to, the things you love, the things you hate, well, then things start to get really clear. But I like this idea of following the clues, because when you start identifying those things, right? Identity. You've identified those things that are meaningful to you. You've identified, I'll put it this way, the word authenticity comes from the word author, right? When you identify, what God has authored in you, because you didn't make you, well, then you have a clear path. And then the clues, when you start acting in alignment with those things that are truest to your nature, it feels really freaking great to be you. You feel genuine, you feel resilient, you feel like you're equipped. But here's the fascinating thing. The clues are just as powerful on the other side. When you're not acting in alignment with your authenticity, right? When you're trying to be like your brother or your dad or your uncle or some talking head on television, you're not going to feel authentic. You're going to start feeling apathetic, imposter syndrome, fearful, avoidant, in general, not authentic and very negative. So I think this idea of following the clues and seeing where your joy, not your happiness, not dopamine, right, but where your joy takes you when you see your impact. I think that's the measuring stick that would probably be the best on any given week or month.
Yeah, and David, when we talk about advancement and really advancing forward in life, I'm someone who believes that you have to take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to you when they're presented to you, because we all are on this infinite journey called life. And I'll tell you, David, when I was born 3 months premature, and the doctors told my parents that I wouldn't live past 3.5. And the middle of this month, I turned 35. So I'm curious, what does living in the moment and the idea of advancement mean to you?
Golly, such a great thing. In fact, I had my buddy Shane Sams and I were talking about this idea of living in the moment today. So I've got several different coaches in my life, and my coach Cindy, she says, when you're feeling like you're on a train you can't get off of, right? You're just, all right, you're busy, you're doing all your things. She says, stop in the moment, notice 3 different colors in the room, notice 3 textures in the room. What do you smell? What do you hear? It's like, well, you start using your senses to get back into the moment, right? Yeah. And we always say this, but it's so true. Yesterday is gone, can't get it back. You don't know what tomorrow holds. And right now, by the way, what is that on, was it Master Shifu and on Kung Fu Panda? When he talks about, the present moment being a present, it's a gift, and that's why we call it the present. And it really is, you get to be alone, and touchable. You get to touch your own heart, your own mind, someone next to you, and just really be present and enjoy the moment. Give yourself the gift of being present. But I think that here's the funny thing, and unless you're doing that, and I'm 49 years old, and I can't tell you how many times, even still, it's a battle to kind of step off the train, because I'm so, kind of just driven to produce something. So advancement, although at face value sounds like a positive word, right? What if you're advancing in the wrong direction? It's so what's fascinating is this idea of back to self-awareness. It's like, man, who am I? What lights me up? What are my strengths? What gives me goosebumps? What am I passionate about? And I'm talking having real clarity on that. Well, then you start advancing in the right direction, and you start to feel sense those clues, right? That energize you.
Yeah, and David, one of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast, I've run it now for 3.5 years, but I looked at the world and I said, there has to be more that brings us together than tears us apart. And I wanted
Mm.
to create a platform that allowed people to create what I call more bridges of unity. So I'm curious. I know we talked about inclusion earlier in the workplace setting, sort of a reference there. But I'm also curious to ask you, what do you think it'll take to create more bridges of unity and a more inclusive culture where everyone can be respected, heard? We may not always agree, but I'm curious, how do you think we can create that inclusive culture again where we're all respected?
No, man, that's a great question. And this might sound really political, but I think that it starts with shutting off the news. It starts with well, I think my opinion is there is a concerted effort to divide. And I mean, if you look closely, I don't think there's anybody who could disagree with that. You look at the evening news and every social media post, nobody is having an intelligent conversation and an exchange of words, right? It's tribalism and people are just shouting at each other. So I think we really need to just take back the ability to think for ourselves, talk to your neighbors, talk to the people that are close to you at work, and talk to those who will actually talk as opposed to those who are so insecure about what they believe that if they're wrong, they don't have an identity. They have nothing. So all they can do is sit and scream at each other. I think it's talk to people who are reasonable, be kind. Kindness goes such a long way, and enter into dialogues that might even, like kind of what you said, we might not disagree here, but guess what, buddy? I value your life. I value your opinion. I value your story. And when you start telling people that and showing them that, odds are they will do the same for you. But I do believe there is a flat, dead, concerted effort across the board, just like they did in Rome, right? Rome was not conquered from the outside. They were divided and they ended up, killing themselves, as it were, and falling apart. And that's what's happening in our country. I think the media and everything else is the enemy at this point.
Well, depending on the news channel you turn on, right?
Well, I don't know. I think it's the two sides of the same coin, is my opinion. But I don't. I think they're all just shouting at each other, wanting to create tribes as opposed to having meaningful dialogue.
And I graduated with a journalism degree in college, David. So it's kind of sad to see the state of what journalism has turned into, isn't it?
Oh yeah, and isn't it? It's neat when you look back in general. Like when I was growing up, or at least my grandparents, right? They would talk objectively about certain things. Well, 20 years ago, now it just changed to people spouting off about their opinions and doing it with flashing lights and conviction. And let's find the most convictional sounding people, the most beautiful people to try to get some point across. And I just, when can we get back to this place where someone presents an idea and you have normal people, right? Not the ding dongs that are wanting to be famous and have the power. Just have a normal conversation around ideas, and that would generally just love and respect one another. That's that's just hard. You can't find that anywhere now. It's a bunch of people screaming at each other.
Well, I would ask you to define your definition of normal, but I figure we would be here all day, so I'll skip over that. But
Yeah.
I also know, David, that in your spare time you sing all over the country, my friend. So tell me, what brings you the most joy from singing, my friend, and why is it a way that you find your own inner center, my friend?
Oh, what a great question. So, Kevin, I feel like music is a can opener to the soul, right? You remember that moment in the movie Shawshank Redemption when they played the song "O mio babino caro" over the loudspeaker. And
Yeah.
everybody just stops, and it's like, oh wow. And of course, that's a dramatic picture of music just being a can opener to our souls. And I'll be honest, I sing because I like goosebumps. I sing because it's this language that brings everybody together, into and unto beauty, as opposed to I want to be right. And I just love how music just changes the room. It causes us to, to look up. It causes us. I can't tell you how many times I've been singing and I literally see, you know, somebody's hand reach over and grab the hand next to them, right? And it changes us. And I think more than anything, whether I'm speaking or singing, I just like I like what it does. I like what it does to our hearts, and it softens us, toward um, toward one another.
Well, we could use that in today's society, couldn't we?
Yeah. Oh man, you got it.
Absolutely. David, I just out of personal curiosity before I ask you about your own life and legacy, what do you think is the true meaning and essence of life? And what do you find the most joy in when experiencing everything life has to offer? What are your thoughts there?
So my last record, it's called "What a Perfect Day," and there's a song on there where there's a line in the song that says, "Don't you want to love and to be loved?" And I think that in general, love, right, the highest currency, and I'm a Christian, so I believe it's not a what, it's a who. I think that the essence of life is to love and to be loved, period. And I think that when people open up their hearts to well, let me back up. I think our biggest we can often find deeper meaning when we think about what we're really ultimately scared of. So
Mhm.
this idea of our I think it was Tim Keller who said our deepest longing is to be truly known, like I mean warts and all, and truly loved and accepted. And our biggest fear is to be, of course, known and rejected, right? You're not good enough. I I don't approve. You're disgusting, whatever that is. I can't take you. You're too much, and you're rejected. So love in its truest form, right, is just it's beautiful. It's extravagant. And so yeah, I think that's, kind of the mission, as it were, is to spread him around to people that that need it. And I'm the chief one in need, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And David, I know that we're both professional speakers, my friend. So, what do you think is the key to really connecting with an audience as a speaker?
You know, truth of the matter is, it's cliche, but man, for heaven's sakes, be yourself. Quite often we want to, and it's out of fear, like, I because I don't want to be rejected. I don't want my true self to be looked down on or rejected. But I think it's what a wonderful gift that we give to other people when we show up, you know, again, the fullest expression of who we are. Sometimes we're silly, right? Sometimes we're regal. Sometimes we're fired up about something. Sometimes we're just whatever, we're normal. So I think this idea of just be yourself. If you're going to be passionate, be passionate. It's people want to know. I like this. I think it's Donald Miller who said, people do business with those that they like, know, and
And
trust.
trust. Yeah.
And it's so fascinating, right? Because if I sense that somebody's being kind of phony, well, I don't trust that, right? And I don't even like it for that matter. But the opposite's true. When somebody gets up there and they're talking about, the things they're passionate about, and I can tell that they're just being super real, man, what a gift, because it makes me feel like I can do the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, David, my final question for you this afternoon has to do with your own personal and professional legacy, my friend, because, I believe that life is all about etching your fingerprints of sand in the sand of differences, people, because we're all put on earth to sort of lay the groundwork for the next generation, my friend. So, how do you want your legacy to be defined, and how do you want your fingerprints of difference to be etched in the sand?
Yeah, Of course, when you can't help but be thinking about a eulogy, at that point, right? What do you want people to say about you? And that really helps to define right now what's really important. And so for me, I like the word inspire. It means to breathe life into. So I would hope that, Lisa, my wife, my daughter, Catherine, my son, Parker, that they would always know that dad, and husband, as it were, we're for you. I am for you like a hurricane. And I've had several friends, including my brothers-in-law, my grandpa. I mean, it was just like whatever. I would walk into the room and they'd be like, "Oh man, sit down, tell me all about it." Whatever. I got this sense that whatever you're into, I'm into, and I just love the idea of, being for someone. In fact, I might write a book about that. I think that's the biggest, the gift you can give somebody is just like, dude, you walk into this room and you're standing next to me. It's on. This is going to happen. We're going to do this. Whatever you're passionate about, I'm passionate about. Let's do it. So I think that, yeah, in general, I would hope people would know that I'm for them like a hurricane.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, David, if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that, my friend?
Yeah, so you can visit my website, David Osk. It's spelled like ask, but it's davidask.com. You can send me an email at hello@davidosk.com. And then my business website is statguardplus.com. So yeah, thank you.
Oh, well, fantastic, my friend. I really want to thank you for the inroads that you're making in the fields of both personal development and business, my friend. Your work in the space of entrepreneurship is most appreciated, and I want to thank you for being here this afternoon to engage in conversation with me. It's most appreciated.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.